All right. Live with News Talk Wednesday night. Brandon Jones, Robert Herriman, thank you so much for watching. Tons of news. It just never ceases to amaze the amount of craziness that's going on in the world, the things that we would have to talk about. Bob, what's going on with you and your thoughts on some of the crazy right now?
Some of the crazy. Well, uh, probably the thing that hit me most over the past week is I did spend some time on C-SPAN watching the oral arguments of the vaccine mandates.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you paid much attention to that,
Sure, sure. And I
but
saw your great post on one of those
yeah,
justices there, giving us just an absolutely sort of shocking, shall we say,
at
response.
least I thought it was. I actually heard that live when I was watching the hearings. And I'm like, I kind of like twitched a little bit. I'm like, did she really say that? But the things that Sotomayor said, and some of the other justices about COVID facts were blatant, and I think that was the most blatant exercise of politics from the bench that I've seen in my decades. But when she said, let me try to get the quote exactly right. Um, I am not sure I understand the distinction why the states would have the power to institute a mandate. Those last words are mine. Um, but the federal government wouldn't. I was like, this oh, I lost him.
I
Anyway, this
mean,
this
okay.
really goes to say that what Mike Meharry told me uh, on a recent interview I did with him, that the 10th Amendment is pretty much ignored in law schools. This is
Mm.
Sotomayor's a Yale law grad. She knows, right? She at least knows. Is she just ignoring it? That's probably the case. But in the article, I also really kind of pointed out, of course, MSNBC and CNN dedicated no time to this, right? Because they knew Sotomayor was just off the rails saying there was 100,000 pediatric cases. Um, but the Fox News hosts, and I saw quite a few of them, very few, and I can't remember names, very few even touched on the portion about her n- not getting the 10th Amendment. Most of them were all over the COVID statements. And
Yeah, that's the part that got a lot of traction was the 100,000 kids basically being hospitalized and all
yeah,
that, and just how exaggerated that is. But I think the quote that you kind of accurately kind of dialed in a little bit was about states' rights, basically. Like
oh, yeah.
it was just so weird. I quote here's the quote. I'm not sure I understand the distinction why the states would have the power to institute a mandate. Uh, but the federal government wouldn't. And that was just, it's just crazy to think that that is the Constitution flipped on its head. But
Yeah.
that shouldn't surprise us. I mean, this is literally the politics in the judicial branch. And, I have to admit, if we were on the clock to kind of like right before you and I kind of partnered up to write together, I was writing for a lot of pop culture websites. And I remember writing a political article for one that I don't know why we did that, but we did. And I talked about how I thought Sonia Sotomayor would not only be Obama's pick, that she was like a crazy radical leftist. And in hindsight, she's worse than I even thought she was because of stuff like this. Like she has no problem going on the record in complete opposition to other justices that are making very clear, distinct factual statements and questions about where the lines would be drawn about when this ends. So I think it was Justice Barrett who asked basically, like, if we allow OSHA to do this, what's the limiting principle? When does this end? Like, if OSHA,
Mhm.
there's no end to the pandemic that we know. And if we say this is okay, what's to stop OSHA? And I'm paraphrasing all of this, folks. Um, what's to stop OSHA from now mandating another vaccine, let's say influenza or pneumonia or what, and just to use the more of a equal apples to apples thing. So the fact that she would do this, I think, was shocking. You just did such a great job of sort of like, dialing right in on the insanity of all this.
Yeah. And the fact that a lot of, I don't know, Republican, conservative, talk radio, cable news people were all over Sotomayor, justifiably over her COVID stuff. Very few even discuss the quote that we're talking about now. And I guess that doesn't surprise me that much. But you gotta stop saying that you're this constitutionalist all the time when the Constitution is being trampled on. You don't say much. You're more worried about other things.
Political points. Yeah, political points over COVID. I mean, it's literally how it was basically being played in the media and the press, the right-wing media. It was a lot more of like, point out how she's ignorant because of the 100,000 quote and kids and hysterics. And it was trying to paint her. And I admit, I think I tweeted something along this lines of like, she sounds like she's an MSNBC watcher for sure, where she's just randomly quoting COVID hysteric numbers that don't even make sense, let alone actually be accurate. But you're absolutely right. The media just completely turned a blind eye to the states' rights issues there. That was definitely a situation that didn't get any play, so to speak.
Yeah. So what caught your eye this past week?
Not as much as civil and sane as that one. I have to go right to the crazy story. It's probably a little old. I think it happened right after us having last week's show. But that was this insanity. This is the teacher who locked her kid in the trunk while she's getting a COVID test because he's positive and she's trying to minimize her exposure, evidently. Talk about COVID derangement syndrome. So here it is. She's a Houston teacher. So this goes into my anti-teacher and anti-COVID hysteria. Her name is Sarah Beam. She's 41. She's a 10th grade English high school teacher. She's now facing felony child endangerment charges after she confessed at a drive-through COVID testing site that she was afraid her son was infected, and having him in the trunk would make limit her avoid her exposure. So what happens is she pulls in. He's 13, and the worker starts asking her probably different questions. Why do you think you have COVID? How long have you had symptoms? Those kinds of things. And then she's mentioned her son's whatever, and says he's in the trunk. And she does the right thing, of course, calls the authorities and, says you need to get him immediately out of the trunk, that kind of thing. So yeah, there was really a lot of news play for this, but this kind of went down my, this week's edition of sort of COVID derangement syndrome. So I assume you've seen this story by now, because I mean it's kind of ran a little bit, but
actually I first saw it on the website. So hat tip to you.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah, it was it's just more lunacy. It's like, what's wrong with you? You're going to treat your child like that? Mm-hmm. Over, she does look
only
like
41.
That's where I was
headed, in poor health, right? She again, I can only make anecdotal analysis from the photos, right? We don't really know much about her health history. There's nothing in the article that indicated that she has some sort of comorbidity or health issue that we should be concerned about or anything like that. And the child's only 13, so he's not at risk. He appeared to be, healthy. He doesn't appear to, there was a statement at the end of the press releases about, he's in health, he's fine, there's no concerns or anything like that with his health. But yeah, that was my COVID derangement syndrome, which is a buzzword I'm going to. But I just can't imagine putting your kid in the trunk for any reason, let alone for something like this.
Yeah. And all right, so the COVID had probably no effect on him. You're going to tell me this scenario is not going to be tattooed on his brain the rest of his life?
Well, she's in jail. Like she got arrested. She's facing a felony charge now, and I don't know how she gets out of it. I'm sure she can have a plea deal or something like that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of let's send someone like this to prison per se, but there's no reason to, let someone like this go free for doing this kind of nonsense.
But
not sure she'd ever be a teacher again.
I mean, teenagers, this kind of stuff sticks with them. How's that going to affect? Yeah, how's that going to affect him as he becomes an adult? What's his trust going to be around adults, authority figures, or whatever?
Yes. Yeah. And what kind of imprint does that do for a female role model? That because obviously that's how boys determine their spouse. They look at their mother, and vice versa for girls looking at their father. So, you've imprinted this crazy. And again, obviously, this is not the first crazy irrational thing. If she's this unhinged, like I joked on Twitter, like if she's watching MSNBC, so if someone's this crazy and fearful, she put her kid in the trunk, who knows what kind of shenanigans this poor kid's gone through in 2 years with her hysterics over fear and all the nonsense that she's been going through. So, on the flip side of the derangement is just an absolutely horrific story that I put up today. Let me make sure I get the right one. I'm not sure exactly how to say his name, so I do apologize, folks, if I do pronounce his name wrong. He is an LA Times writer. His name is Michael Hiltzik. He wrote an LA Times article, and here's what originally happened. It didn't go really wide, and I didn't notice it right away. The article was titled, at this point, column, "Mocking Anti-Vaxxers, COVID's Death is Ghoulish, Yes, but Maybe Necessary." A very hyperbolic and shocking title, to say the least. However, when you read the article, and this came out, I think, yesterday, Shapiro did a little segment on Ben Shapiro's show too. When you look at the URL says, "Why shouldn't we dance on the graves of anti-vaxxers?" It's an LA Times writer, a Pulitzer Prize winning LA Times writer.
So
then
what does that tell us? Was that the original title then, huh?
That was the original title. And then when I go to search it to make sure I got the quotes correctly, because I try to pull up the original article, it's been changed again. And now the title reads Hiltzik, Death and the Anti-Vaxxer. But everything is still there. There's no changes to the article that I can read. It reads very, very extreme. It begins, this is the soft portion of the article. "Pleas for civility are a fraud. Their goal is so blunt and unfeeble criticism and distract from its truthfulness. Typically, they're the worst of hypocrites." And he goes on. This is where that statement gets a little crazy. It may be not a little ghoulish to celebrate or exalt the deaths of vaccine opponents, and it may be proper to express sympathy and solicitude to those they leave behind. But mockery is not necessarily the wrong reaction to those who publicly mocked anti-COVID measures, encouraged others to follow suit before they perished of the disease, the dangers of which they belittled. Nor is it wrong to deny them our sympathy and solicitude, to make sure it's known that when their deaths are marked, that they had stood fast against measures that might have protected themselves and others from the fate that they succumbed to. It is, I don't know. I can't imagine being so callous and blinded by politics that you not only feel this way, you're going to use your role as a journalist to publicly encourage people to be that vile and outspoken, to say, basically, we think it's not only okay, we encourage you to dance on the graves of those that are unvaxxed and die. It's just shocking that the LA Times has not only kept this article up, all they do is just keep trying to change the title to kind of soften the vile vitriol nonsense that this man is spewing.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a lengthy op-ed.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess they were assuming that most people wouldn't read through the whole thing, but yeah, it was the title. I saw that a couple days ago, whatever day it came out.
I see it
And
came out on Sunday. I didn't know what day of the week it came out on.
yeah, it's been a little while because it
Yeah.
came through my feed. I remember seeing that. And yeah, I honestly didn't read the whole thing, so I'm guilty of that. But the title alone said it all. It was about it being necessary. So the fact that human life is taken depends how human life is taken away from us. If it's because you're unvaccinated, that's not so bad. But yeah, it's just a really scary way of thinking of things.
But no one thinks this way. No one. Okay, even if you have those moments of like awful thoughts, and you have like the chain smoker that has cancer in their, let's say, 50s or 60s, and you're like, all right, well, you kind of did it to yourself, right? The obese overeater that's 300 pounds that now has like coronary heart disease and heart attacks, and all right, you kind of did it to yourself. Okay, those are fleeting comments, right? This guy took that and then went public with, I'm going to write an article about dancing on the graves of others for whatever reason. It doesn't even matter why he wrote that. It's just the fact that he would do that to me is so disgusting. And again, the Times is going to not pay attention to some plebe like me, but I'm like, dude, you should not only take this article down, he should at least be suspended or something. This is awful.
But the thing is the thing that's really scary is he's not alone. Maybe others that don't have the same platform as him, people on Twitter, I've seen a lot of tweets in that same vein. So there's a lot of people out there with that mindset, which is pretty scary. Now I did see an interview with, he's a bioethicist, probably the most famous one in this country. His name is Art Kaplan.
Oh, I don't have that article, that story.
Do you know about it?
No, that's not the one. Okay. I know. I have a different Twitter craziness that I was also going to mention if we got to, but yours sounds much more interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I can find the video, but he was being interviewed, I think, on MSNBC, and he was saying that unvaccinated people, should have to, pay more for insurance, more for health. I mean, he was going down this whole litany of penalties for not being vaccinated, financial and otherwise. And I thought that was kind of on the evil side. And he didn't say that about smokers and lung cancer. He didn't say that about some other conditions. It was just being unvaccinated. I'm not saying he should say that for anybody. If somebody requires healthcare, and that should be up to the insurance company anyway, where they determine the risk and then the cost because of that. But the fact that a bioethicist came out and said that, it's like, nah, something's wrong with this guy, man.
Actually, the hypocrisy of the title is the idea of you're a bioethicist and you're like just basically like, oh no, we shouldn't treat these people. We should basically treat them as non-human. We should say, oh no, we're not going to treat them. They did this to themselves.
Did you find it?
No, I didn't.
Oh yeah, but basically,
I was going on to something next.
Pariahs, it's like, seriously, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, is this where we've come as a human race? I guess so.
Well, COVID has driven us there. Like I said, we called it COVID Derangement Syndrome for a reason. And you are so right with this is people that they're not alone. That is, it's dancing on the grave of the anti-vax. It's trying to keep it's so I think with Omicron, right? It bursts through all of the narrative. You were talking about last week that everything that they said, it's all crumbling in around them. Mm-hmm. We're talking about how they're going to have to try to grab at straws, and it's like, well, so I'll give you an example. I heard today, and I'll just say a percentage of the number of people that have been tested positive in just the last couple months, for instance, almost 80% of them are already vaxxed. So the narrative of you have to be vaxxed and all this, and it gives you this sort of like, it's not so much a protection from getting it. It's a symptom mitigator. It reduces your chances of serious illness and death and those kinds of things. We've talked about this many, many times. But now it's become, we have to demonize something. Whoopi Goldberg did her thing, right? So I did all the things that are right, but I still got it. I was on the altar of following the rules, but I still got it. So now we have to figure out a way to blame someone else in the village, right? And you see this in religions, right? Someone in the village has to be the center. Someone has to be the one that's causing this to continue to rain down on us. And they just appear to be the punching boy, for lack of a better term. I want to share this. Have you seen the Jimmy Kimmel Barbie doll commercial?
I did.
It shows how little they know about anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that they think this is how people are. So this is a Jimmy Kimmel's fake commercial.
There's a new doll in town, and the fun is contagious. It's anti-vax Barbie.
I call my own shots is what's on her shirt. And they cut her hair, so she's got like a crop top.
She's independent. She doesn't trust science.
Bill Gates is the Antichrist. Vaccines have Satan's blood.
Vaccines have Satan's blood. Bob, have you heard anybody who said they have Satan's blood?
No, I have. No, I haven't.
We're religious people, right? And I don't think I'm hearing the Antichrist and have Satan's blood argument.
Satan's blood.
No, it's just taking it to. I mean,
I am not your lab rat is the shirt that she has on there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he got a skit out of it. Probably got.
It keeps going though. I think it gets crazier because the other stuff they said is just.
Own research
says here Moderna turns your teeth Jewish.
Take your.
Okay, what are they talking about? Moderna turns your teeth Jewish? Is that ever a thing?
No, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot.
There's a QAnon thing or something. I've never heard that. I see the things he's talking about are not even things I've heard.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's just part of the skit. They're just amplifying anti-vaxxer complaints to the absurd, to the real absurd. That's what it seems like.
Everywhere. Shopping.
I'm sorry, you can't come in here without a mask. I have a medical condition.
Okay. Now, we have covered probably a half a dozen videos of conflict over masks. I've yet to see anyone that was the person that's unmasked being confronted as the one that attacks the one that has the mask. Correct? Have you seen any videos where that's been the case? I've seen people being confrontational, like they don't want to leave, but not being physical like that. It's always the reverse. It's the masked people that are attacking the non-masked people.
Yeah, because I mean, they're just trying to mind their own business and do what they're doing.
Yeah. I thought this video was very telling. I know it sounds silly because it is so extreme.
Bitch, and you're going to jail.
To the stables.
Thank you for sharing your medicine, dancer.
There you go. There's a Joe Rogan horse medicine reference, right? We got to make sure we have that, right?
And on the plane.
So she's duct taped to the chair because she won't wear a mask or whatever, right? So I guess that's supposed to reflect the duct tape, and all the other ones are wearing their mask proper.
And the only mandate this Barbie cares about is with her proud boyfriend Ken.
Let's go, Brandon.
Hi, Ken. Want to go throw eggs at?
What does this shirt say? Johnson and Johnson is Satan and Satan. Okay, got it.
I didn't watch the whole thing, so a lot of this is new to me right now.
Alex Jones is talking about monoclonal antibodies.
So she makes it. So Alex Jones is talking about monoclonal antibodies. So now they're equating monoclonal antibodies as being some crazy conspiratorial thing. Alex Jones, they don't work. Blah 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 blah. I mean, I don't know. My thing is it just fits down our COVID derangement. Like they're just so extreme and radical with the stuff that they're saying. I haven't even heard these things. Like it's one thing whenever it's like, okay, well, no one takes this seriously. I've heard it. It's a QAnon thing or whatever. But I actually have not had time. I want to look up the Jewish teeth thing. I don't even know. That was just such a bizarre, crazy thing. I didn't know what to say to that.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. I think they were just trying to be funny, but
I guess.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll try that. Sure.
And some of it was kind of funny, actually. You know.
Well, again, if you're going over the top for gags, that's fine. But
yeah, that's how I kind of looked at it, actually.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's not how Kimmel looked at it.
No, they actually. I don't ever get the sense of the self-awareness that they're actually like. It's kind of like Saturday Night Live. They suffer from the same syndrome where they think these are jokes when they basically are nothing but like slate headlines or something ripped out of that LA Times article written by the guy who wants to dance on unvaxxed people's graves. So, all right. Well, we can close out COVID derangement syndrome with Barbie because that's a pretty good place to stop, I suppose. Well, what else on your list there, Bobby? Anything else at the top of your list?
Well, not much of a list, but you know, we were texting back and forth before we came on, and I was telling you I was on my way home. So I was in the car, and you know, in where I live, of course, there's not a lot of good talk radio. So I was listening to our old friend Hannity on the way home, and of course, you may have heard that the inflation rate is now up to 7%, and so they're ranting and raving about it, you know, and all these people, and a lot of people are not going to be thrilled with me saying this, but they're all heaping all this problem on top of Biden, and I want to say is Biden is only contributing to it. This has been a problem for at least 2 or 3 decades. And all this spending, I'm old enough to remember when Alan Greenspan just opened up the spigot back during the George Bush administration, and you can actually look at some of the numbers. And Biden increased the national debt so far this year by 1.5 trillion. Okay, and that's not good, right? That's kind of how it's been going for a number of years now. Donald Trump's 4 years, he increased the debt by almost 7 trillion. Nobody talks about that. That's huge.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, most of that happened at the very end with the COVID stuff, 3 or 4 or 5 trillion or whatever that turned out. So that's why they get a pass. Right. But reality is, you're absolutely right. I didn't end up in this position where I'm talking to you like this because the bailout was one of the big turning points for me. Because not only was it the bailout of the banks and why are we bailing out people and not letting them go through bankruptcy, it's the fact that we were basically spending that legislative move alone was I think $700 to $800 billion up front. Obviously, it's more than that over time, and then they followed that up with more bailouts and more money. That was my big trigger. Like, okay, I'm out, because now you've got Republicans who claim they're fiscally conservative. They claim they're this, they're claiming they're that. Oh no, we're just going to throw massive amounts of money. And then, of course, as I've said many, many times, Obama took the worst of Bush when it came to spending. He just kept making it worse. It wasn't as though it ever turned. And really, be honest, before the pandemic, Trump didn't either. He spent more money than Obama did. It just kept going up and up and up. Yeah. And that's how their budget works. They don't even have a budget anymore. They just do what's called continuing resolution, where they keep spending more money than they did last time.
Yeah, and with Bush, I mean, of the most recent presidents, in his tenure as president, he increased the debt the most as a percentage. It was over 100% increase. Even Obama didn't do that. So I guess all I'm asking is, I would love to see somebody on Fox News at least be honest about this. This has been going on for a while. I mean, Joe Biden is not helping matters. There's no, don't get me wrong. He's only making things worse, and he wants to make it even worse with additional spending and additional debt. But this has been going on a while, and I don't see people being honest about this on cable news. And I took a survey the other day on YouTube. How you can put up like just put up like this link without a video. It can just be like a poll or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. And it was, what's causing the most damage in this country. And fortunately, one of the selections was, cable news and the media. And that's the one I selected. And I really believe that there's just no honesty in anything. And then, you have people that are just going to watch their channel, and that's all they're going to know. So anybody that is very pro-Trump probably has no idea that he racked up almost $7 trillion in debt in 4 years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that the media is very complicit. I always go back to Tim Pool. He was very detail oriented when he was trying to talk about the downfall of like Vice and these far left websites who basically sold their soul out for clips and how to make ad revenue money, and then how to placate to the audience. Like we can't run certain stories that will upset our audience. And what I don't think Tim got at the time, I don't know if he's there now or not. I don't really watch his show much anymore, but for me, it was like, well, that's how it's all been running. Like that's why Fox is the way they are. It's why CNN's the way they are. It's definitely why MSNBC, who led the way there, they and Fox, because they just continue to get further and further away, where we're not going to do anything that would upset our audience. So to get honesty, if a guest were to go on Fox and say the things that we are saying and discussing right now, we would never get invited back. It might get through if it were live, but there's no way we'd be invited back. And I've heard libertarians talk about it. Dave Smith talked about some of his, interesting experiences over the years being on, I think, CNN's SE Cup show, different things. And you're like, oh yeah, they're not going to invite you back. At some point, there's an expiration date on how much time they'll let you spew this stuff that would be angering their audience, basically.
Yeah, I've seen that quite a bit. I first got introduced to Glenn Greenwald on MSNBC years ago. He's never invited.
Oh, there's no way they're having any part of that guy.
Fox Business Peter Schiff used to be a regular on there. Don't ever see him anymore.
He's treated like a crazy person, like both right and left kind of treat. He's in like that sort of like Rogan, you just don't belong in the club sort of category. Like they don't know what to do with Peter Schiff. Well,
I'll tell you what, if anybody's interested, watch the 2 or 3 long interviews on Joe Rogan with Peter Schiff. Fantastic stuff. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, those are good examples. And I think this is where, whenever the earth keeps turning, the clock keeps running, and people will eventually wake up and realize, well, how hard did we end up at 25, 27, $30 trillion in debt? And some of these things I think will eventually kind of come to the surface. But I just don't know that there's any sort of end in sight right now of people wanting to go through the heartache. And I don't even know how you can do it. You talk about how would we even forget about just the interest rate? How could we get rid of trillions of dollars in excess, physical cash in the system? I know a lot of it's digital, but how do we even do that? Do you just create a policy where you're like, well, instead of destroying it and printing and replacing it, we just stop doing that? We just
stop doing it.
Every month is 100 billion. You cut your spending, so we go back. I would say, can't we go back to like the Bush years moved it, but Obama took it to a $4 trillion budget. That was spending. So can we just go back to the Obama budget? Can we just go back to $4 trillion? And then all the rest of there's no way they'll do that.
No, there's no way. Anything that's going to be quote unquote responsible and try to get us back to where we should be is going to cause a lot of pain.
Yes.
There's going to be tons of pain, a lot of unhappy people, and no politician is going to want unhappy constituents.
Yeah, the trillions and trillions of dollars of debt hanging out there, and it's just shocking. And I know we talk about inflation, but as far as I know, and maybe you can understand, the inflation number changed. I think it even predates Bush, but it doesn't really count food and fuel and stuff the way it used to, right? Because they talk about it being the worst it's been since like 82, but I think it's significantly worse than that because it doesn't really take into account some of those other metrics that it used to, correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I can't remember when that was. It was 25 years ago. And the Fed just stopped reporting that as an indicator, and it made them look good for a little while, but it always catches up to you.
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody today at work talking about, just our experiences, moving, building a farm and spending money on, a 16-foot pig panel was $16 and change when we moved, and now a year later it's like $33. There's a gas station up near us where they went out of business about the time of the election, and the gas on the sign says $2.21. I went to go get gas, and I got regular gas, but there was premium gas. It was $3.83 a gallon. Each little step, each little increment, that's just putting more cost into the system for all of us. It's why your pork costs more. It's why your meat costs more. You got to drive it places, so all your goods are going to cost more. And it's just like, I don't know how you reverse some of that beyond that, because that's just to kind of get us back to where we even were. But reality is, you start doing what we're talking about, where you actually cut spending. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I remember.
I don't see it happening. So
Yeah,
I mean, we may be forced to at some point.
yeah.
But I mean, but that just it's not. I don't think it's going to happen voluntarily.
Yeah. That was a rough, sort of weird way of getting that news today and seeing it. And you're absolutely right. We're not going to see Fox News bash Trump. We're not going to see MSNBC really bash Biden. And we're seeing that already. We started seeing the major press kind of spin it in a way. And I got to be honest, isn't the Paul Krugmans of the world and those, like, they're all about inflation, right? They think it's a good thing to expand the economy through inflation, right? That's kind of their philosophy.
Historically, that's what he said. I don't know where he stands today. I haven't followed him in a long time.
Yeah.
I doubt he's changed much.
No, I would agree with you. I don't think so. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything else. I thought we might end on a weird news story. Haven't done a weird news story for a while.
All right.
I know we're both a little crunched on time tonight. Don't know if you've seen this insanity.
And after that, I just want to throw out a question and see what kind of answers I get.
Oh, all right. Here we go.
What is this?
Yeah. She sells her farts in a jar.
Oh, okay.
She's made $200,000 through TikTok to sell farts in a jar.
Oh, man.
Here she did it, and it lays out what she did.
I missed my calling.
TLC reality show. She's gone viral on TikTok by documenting her lucrative fart selling business, garnering hundreds of thousands of dollars with followers who quote, "A day in the life of the fart jar girl." So what really got her in the headlines, and I found it because she actually got herself sick because she was eating like a double batch of beans and something else, and then kind of waiting. But then she ended up having just so much, she got really, really sick. So she had to kind of stop doing all of this. But the story is it's a little strange. It's a little strange here.
Well,
here you go. It says, quote, I was gonna read her quote. She says, "I'm getting a lot of requests from guys saying that they just want to inhale my farts, and I always thought it was kind of a joke. I never took it seriously. I thought they were just blowing smoke up my behind, and I'd laugh it off and just let it go. But one day I was thinking of different ways to make money and boosting my income on my platform." I'm just stopping reading this nonsense. What kind of insane person? Because I wonder if I could monetize my gas. That's
the thing. Is I don't think it is insane. Just looking at her, I was going to ask you before you started that talk. Reading that paragraph, I wonder what percentage of her customers are male.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%, right? It's got to be. And
I would assume,
it's
7% or something.
There's the kink factor out
big
there.
Lesbian following or not, but she's obviously not reaching out. There is. So in case you don't realize how bad Americans are, folks, or I guess it's global. I don't know if she ships globally, but that's how it works. So farts in a jar.
Yeah, weird, but not totally surprising. Not surprising, really.
It's going to make for a great thumbnail. It's going to tell you, warn you right now. Great thumbnail.
Okay. Remember, the show's PG though, bro.
Oh, I'm all about it. I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
Okay, bro.
All right, so you get your question
before we close
ready.
out. I got a question. Something I was thinking about in the car today. I was going to ask you and Snitker, and so we're older guys now, but when you were a teenager, were there any musicians or bands that you were like a closet follower, but you couldn't say you liked them because you would have been mocked, ridiculed, or beat up? But today, you're perfectly comfortable with saying that you like them.
I won't say that I was fearful of being, mocked or beat up or anything, but because I think there was a lot, so when I was growing up and I got into like the heyday of the 80s was where a lot of other different genres of music all become sort of on the even keel. So there was pop radio music, but that was the rise of there was alternative music, heavy metal, Glam rock came along later in the 80s into the 90s, obviously grunge in the 90s. So you have these different genres of things that kind of came along. I don't think I was ever, like I said, afraid of saying I like something, maybe a particular song. I don't know that I have one that comes to mind. My wife does tease me to this day because I do enjoy what seems as very effeminate music from the 80s. When I talk about my love for Journey, like Don't Stop Believin', and I talk about how much I still love listening to like Bon Jovi. She finds that very, I don't know, not the most masculine of music for someone my age to be like still such a massive fan of. But I'm not really like, I wasn't like a massive fan of like teeny bopper pop music or anything like that. I guess I probably would have been a little more shy about making a big issue of going and seeing, because I would go to concerts back then. You could go for like $5. Sometimes you could go for free. Janice Landing had a place over. There's lots of places in Pinellas County you could go, whatever. So I don't think I made a big issue because I didn't want to get into, you know, who they were or how appropriate or inappropriate my music taste would be. I'd go see like Black Flag and Henry Rollins in concert, or I'd go see, you know, some metal band concert. Yeah, I would just, but I would listen. I don't know. All right, so let me ask. Let me parry it back to you because you should answer the question too, and then I'll have a follow up that kind of maybe that kind of expands on this. So what was your thing where you're like, I was into this, but I didn't really tell anybody?
Oh yeah, well, that's what I was thinking about. I think I was listening to a YouTube video driving and recalling how much I really liked that band. I was a teenager in the 70s, and it was, you know, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, so on and so forth. But I was a closet fan of Neil Diamond, who I still like to this day, and I'm not afraid to admit it today. But even more challenging, and I probably would have been beat up and thrown into a locker. I was a big fan of the Carpenters.
I was almost going to make a joke about the Carpenters. So my mom used to listen to Carpenters all the time, and I know the words to all these Carpenter songs. And every now and again, if you hear something like in a movie or something, you know the words. And Laura will tease me every single time, like, you can admit you're a fan. I'm like, no, my mom listened to this stuff like all the time.
I did like them for all. I mean, granted, they were poppy to say the least, but Karen Carpenter had still has beautiful one of the greatest voices ever, right? Right. Her brother was incredible in arranging songs, and Karen Carpenter was one of the greatest female drummers of all time. Not a lot of people.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that. All right, so I would add Fleetwood Mac and my love of Stevie Nicks to the list, which is obviously sounds a lot more effeminate than it probably should.
Yeah, but you know, and then that would be okay when I grew up.
Yeah, I know. So I was never really afraid of getting into these things. So I would say,
like, if you were say like Barry Manilow or something,
I was not into Barry. I'm not.
Right. I'm just saying that's what I'm looking for.
But see, I was into like the crazy, silly, stupid side of all of it too. I enjoyed. I saw Weird Al in concert. Right. You know, I go see Weird Al. Like, that's pretty ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
I would think that some.
But you would never be ashamed of mentioning that when you were a kid.
I wasn't ashamed of mentioning much of anything. I would say the closest thing I can think of, maybe. But see, I wouldn't say that I listened to their. I don't remember having like a cassette or record. Would be like ABBA or Bee Gees or something.
Oh, that would fit. Yeah, that would.
Yeah, ABBA. It's like I knew their music, but again, that's my mom. Because when I was young, she would just have these records and stuff playing all the time. And actually, I remember like when I would learn to read, I learned to read like, you know, between like 3 and 5 by reading comic books and record labels. Like, she would say, get the Beatles one, blah, blah, blah. It says this. And I would have to learn what the words were. And it was her way of teaching me to read. And it was something I could do. So I remember all of that stuff from my childhood. But I can tell you now, I wasn't like 14 popping in an ABBA cassette and jamming out, or I wasn't. No, that wasn't really happening.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
No, you know, so it's a little different. But okay, so I was a concert rat, or at least I had my phase. Do you have any crazy concerts you're like, oh man, if I admit that I saw these people? Because I have one story you're not going to believe. But I went because, you know, it is true. I'm not trying to give myself cover. I took her to see my girlfriend at the time, who, you know, Milli Vanilli.
Oh man. All lip syncing, huh?
And Starship. You built this city. Yeah, it was
at least
terrible.
Starship had a rock and roll history to it, you know.
Yeah, those were the two that were probably some of the. If you have to admit, they're probably the more embarrassing of the shows that I saw. But again, back then, it's not like today where you're spending $30 for some nonsense.
Yeah,
it would cost like you could afford to go. I could afford to go. I could work at McDonald's and have money to go see a concert. Like there was no like way I didn't have to save up money for like a month to go to a concert or anything.
Yeah, no, I didn't go to any embarrassing concerts, but as an adult, I did. But it was for my daughter when she was very young. I took her to Clay Aiken and Kelly Clarkson.
Yeah, that's not bad though. That would fit the.
But it was a bunch of little kids and their parents, basically.
I was the designated driver, and I took some folks, and I think we either saw Barry Manilow or Neil Diamond. I forget which it was. I don't even remember being there, but I know I was the designated driver. That's what I remember. I remember eating a lot of food. They paid for everything, so all you had to do was just eat and drink. And they say drink real like soda, because I'll drink soda. Mm-hmm. And we went to there, and I was miserable in the sense of the concert. The other thing that happened, were you in Tampa when Adventure Island had concerts? I don't know how long you've been here. So at Adventure Island, when I was in college, probably the end of high school into college, and during the summer, now I would take summer classes, so I didn't really leave town. They would have these like concert nights. So the park would close, but then you would have this ticket to go in for this concert, and you could ride rides or whatever, but they'd have these musicians that came in. I saw really bad 80s bands during that time because it was again, I was pre-drinking age. It was cheap, and it was, so I've seen like Richard Marx and Cutting Crew and these really bad 80s bands with their one hits and whatever. And like, I don't mean like see them. I mean like literally like there's no one there. So you're only, a few hundred people. So I'm like, I'm like arm's length away from where they are.
Yeah, you're getting showered by their spit and everything.
Yeah, it was just insane. So, but no, I was like I went to a major concert rat phase where I was just, I've seen almost everything. The only thing I could say I didn't see to this day, I have regrets of not going. I sold my ticket to go see the Stones at Tampa, the old Tampa Stadium, sombrero, on the field kind of tickets. It was like, I never have seen them. And I've never seen any of the Beatles, like when McCartney and, Harrison, they actually had tours. I've never seen any of the Beatles. I've never seen any of the Stones. So if I had any major regret, you know what, now you mentioned, I don't think I ever saw Led Zeppelin.
Oh, well, you would have been pretty young because John Bonham died in 1980.
Oh, I know I wouldn't have seen the original, but I would have been able to see, whatever tour they've done after the fact. I wouldn't have. Yeah, it's fine. So, but yeah, no, it was. Look, it's a thing. Laura and I are so selective now. We've done some Christian concerts and stuff, but even some of those are like the church experience ones are way better than going to like the actually there's a concert this weekend, like Winter Jam is back in tour, and they offered me to go, and I'm like, I don't have it in me anymore, man. I don't want to be there till like midnight. I want to deal with 10, 12, 15,000 people. Yuck.
Yeah, well, bro, I gotta get rolling, but I was gonna say one thing. I almost called you last weekend, but I knew you wouldn't be going. But St. Pete had their first ever Comic-Con.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know St. Pete had one. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I did not get that presser.
Yeah, first one, and I was going to see if you were going to drive, 100 miles to go to it or not. But
no, that would. I
figured no.
I would go if it fits the schedule. But I would never make a trip. I haven't done any Comic-Cons in a couple of years. So, all right, my friend, thanks for your time. I'm glad we were able to fit some stuff in and get some stuff off the news to-do list. So I'll talk to you next week, my friend.
All right, man. God bless.